Settle in America, the presidential race hanging in the balance as we await results from a handful of key states. We'll tell you where things stand up and down the ballot as the country wakes up this morning after an extraordinary election day. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Carlo. I don't even know what day it is. For Wednesday, November 4th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. And Carlo, you're the one who has not slept.
Yeah, I know. Don't come looking at me for what day it is, Jill. It might as well be Monday over here. I don't even know. Yeah, it is Wednesday, I think. But yeah, I have not slept. Sort of shut my eyes for about 20, 30 minutes there but I don't know if that counts. But let me just say, all-nighters, not what they're cracked up to be when you're in your mid-30s.
Not what they were when you were in college. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so it is 6 a.m. right now on the East Coast. So I want to get that out there because everything could potentially change by the time you listen to this podcast. But here's where we are. So the presidential race, once again hinging on the outcome of three northern battleground states, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. As of this recording, neither President Trump nor Joe Biden has the 270 electoral votes needed to win, even though the president made an extraordinary announcement overnight calling for the counting of outstanding ballots to be stopped and vowing to fight the results in Supreme Court. Quoting the president, he says this is fraud on the American public. We're getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. And he went on to say, quote, "We want all voting to stop," end quote. So remarkable words and also false, right?
Right.
These states are still way too close to call. And you know what? Every vote deserves to be counted. We have a lot of people, because we're in a pandemic, who voted absentee, record numbers. And those in many of these states are the last votes that are counted, not the first. The in-person voting is counted first. Meanwhile, Biden, earlier in the night, he urged everyone to just be patient, and he said that they feel good about where they are.
So, God, I mean, obviously, like, the first thing we got to do is do exactly what you said, which is to say that what President Trump said is not true. There is no reason to believe that there's fraud. He has not won the election, at least not at this point. So yeah, I mean, I think when you look at what's actually happening, it's pretty consistent with what a lot of us, Jill, including you and I, were saying was possible and really even likely, which is that this was going to be, both you and I sort of made predictions, I think, which were sort of hopeful predictions that this thing was going to be done and dusted last night. So that's not the case. But we did. I mean, there was a very good chance, and it was probably the most likely chance, just given the situation with the mail-in votes, that this was going to be a long, drawn-out slog because of those absentee ballots, and that President Trump would try to claim early victory and accuse Democrats of stealing the election and trying to do battle in the courts. Again, that's not surprising. He's been telegraphing this for many weeks now.
All right,
and
so
this
Carlo,
is exactly.
I just want to interrupt because I know you're not on a lot of sleep / none. And you were here last night. You were at Cheddar HQ as the votes were coming in and as the states were putting out results. So can you just very quickly walk us through the evening? And I know as a viewer, I was watching. So the first big piece of news, I think, was Florida, right? Florida was that state that if had that gone to Biden, this thing would have been over. But it was pretty clear that was not going to happen. And in fact, that the president made huge inroads with the the Cuban community down in Miami. Yes. So that really helped. So Florida goes to Trump. Just walk us through how the night went and kind of like where the big surprises were.
Well, I think that was. I don't know if Florida was a surprise because, again, first of all, I never thought that Biden was going to pull off Florida. It's just the electorate down there is just so. It's bizarre, and I'm not saying that as an offense to anybody. It's just such a fascinating state. But I think that what was a surprise was how poorly Joe Biden did in Miami-Dade, right? Miami-Dade. If you're a Democrat and you want to win Florida, you have to turn out huge numbers in Miami-Dade County, and he didn't do that. He won it, but it was the margin was not that large. So once that happened, I think then you started to sort of get this sense, and we had the sense in the newsroom that this was not going to be this blue wave that a lot of Democrats were hoping for. This was not going to be one of these elections where we're in bed at 1 a.m. and we know where this thing is going. But after Florida, God, I can't even remember what happened. Help me out here. What happened after that, Joel? It all still feels like a little bit of a blur to me.
Well, so it was really interesting, and it was interesting from a viewer's perspective. Early results were coming in, and Ohio was being it was like 80. It was some crazy margin for Joe Biden. As it turns out,
Yeah.
the president has won Ohio. So there were just certain states. We have North Carolina still too close to call. Georgia still too close to call.
That's an interesting
Arizona,
one.
though, is a big one that went for for Joe Biden. So that was a one
Yeah.
that got called in kind of the wee hours of the night last night.
Georgia was really interesting because that looked. I was sort of the New York Times has their dreaded election needles, and they were running those on the Georgia race. I was watching it, and it was tilting a little bit towards Biden, and then it was going all the way towards Trump, and then it flipped completely back towards Biden. And I believe Biden is in the lead in Georgia at the moment, but it's sort of irrelevant because it's a toss-up. We just don't know at this point. So that was Georgia was really interesting. And the Hispanic vote thing, and I haven't had enough time to really process this yet, but just off the top of my head, President Trump doing much better with Hispanics. That is fascinating to me. There's this theory in politics, right, that favors Democrats, that the idea being demographics or destiny, right? Like the country is becoming more diverse, and that automatically is a good thing for Democrats. That's just not the case. It doesn't look like, at least. And the Hispanic vote, it's not just in Florida. Florida has sort of a non-representative Hispanic population or Latino population because there's so many Cubans. But look at I made a couple notes here last night. Look at Texas, South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, the border with Mexico. Zapata County, Hillary Clinton won by 33 points. Trump is up right there by 5 points. Starr County, also in southern Texas, 96% Latino. This is the most Latino county in America. Clinton crushed Trump by 60 points in 2016. Biden's up by only 8. So again, there's going to be a lot of time to sort of try and understand what these numbers mean. But President Trump's ability to make inroads with Hispanics, definitely one of the more interesting sort of facets of the evening.
So J.D. Durkin, our White House correspondent, he tweeted, and I think this is a really good takeaway, just in terms of everything. He says, so in 2016, people stayed home, didn't take Trump seriously, et cetera, and he won by the slimmest of margins. In 2020, Dems went hard in the paint, get out the vote, on the ground, increasing voter rolls, et cetera, and it is still this close. This says a lot.
It does say a lot, and I think, okay, so just a cut, and again, I just jotted down a couple notes. I didn't really have time to formulate a lot of thoughts this morning, or a lot of coherent thoughts at least, so I apologize for that. But I think these are the takeaways that are in my head, again, at this early hour. We did not get a sweeping repudiation of Trumpism. Democrats were hoping for that, and they did not get it. So whatever that means, we don't know, but it doesn't mean that regardless of the outcome of the election, that President Trump is going to sort of just recede into the shadows here. He is going to be here to stay, at least in terms of being a force in Republican politics. But back to the actual state of the race. We're in the bad place. And what I mean by that is this is where I really did not want to be in this morning, which I was really hoping we were not going to be in, which is that the possibility of a contested election, I think, is rather high. And even if that doesn't happen, Jill, this is a close election, right? Whatever happens, this is going to be a nail biter. It's not a blowout.
All right,
So
so
what does
let's
that
talk.
mean?
Oh, sorry,
Oh,
go on.
sorry, but I was just saying, but what that means in a situation when you have an electorate as polarized as ours, half of the voters are likely to view the president as illegitimate, no matter what happens. That's very bad, man. That is really bad. That's why I was hoping, that we would have a results report or a result to report this morning.
All right, let's talk, Carlo, about where Congress stands right now. The House of Representatives will stay in Democratic control. AOC and her fellow squad members all won their races. The 25-year-old Republican Madison Cawthorn won in North Carolina to become the first member of Congress born in the 1990s. And Marjorie Taylor Greene won her seat in Georgia to become the first QAnon promoter in Congress. Democrats appear to be losing the path to Senate control as Republicans fended off several key challenges. So Lindsey Graham won in South Carolina, Joni Ernst won in Iowa, Tommy Tuberville won in Alabama, but Dems picked up 2 seats of their own. So John Hickenlooper won in Colorado, and Mark Kelly, that was a really big one, defeated Martha McSally in Arizona. I
Yeah,
was
Markel.
I was surprised about Lindsey Graham just because his opponent has raised so much
Yeah.
money.
And it wasn't even particularly close. But again, I mean, that race was interesting. I think that, Jamie, God, I'm blanking on
Harrison?
his last Harrison. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he had a tough road to hoe there, just because you're talking about a deep red state, and he did quite good, but Lindsey Graham still won with relative ease, even for all of sort of like his reputational problems within the party. So yes, that was interesting. Mark Kelly in Arizona, he of course is the husband of Gabby Giffords, the astronaut, and who has the twin brother who is also an astronaut. I really like him for whatever that's worth. I think he seems like a really genuine and good guy. So yeah, again, it's very hard to talk about this stuff because we just don't know what the outcome is going to be yet. It does appear that the Senate is not going to flip. It still could. There's still a couple outstanding races that could change things, especially in Georgia. So I think what you got to look at is what happens if there's a Biden presidency and a Republican Senate. Can they get anything done in that situation? What does it mean? I'm particularly interested in what does that mean for stimulus? Would they be able? Because if there was a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president, there would be a huge stimulus bill coming our way. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if McConnell would play ball with a Biden presidency. That'll be an interesting thing to watch. If that happens.
Some promising news, though. Despite fears of unrest and hiccups at the polls, Election Day and night went relatively smoothly across the country, with only isolated incidents reported. There have been fairly significant demonstrations in D.C. overnight, but no sign of widespread unrest or violence so far, as states remain on high alert. The caveat to that is, I think part of the reason that President Trump coming out last night and essentially declaring victory and saying that the voting needed to stop and the counting needed to stop, the reason that is so particularly dangerous is because it's basically starting this whole idea that
Exactly.
if when the dust settles and all of the ballots are counted and Biden comes out ahead, that it'll have been a fraudulent win, and that could create a situation where there's violence.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope that doesn't happen because to your point, we did so good yesterday as a country. I mean, really, it was remarkable. When I went to vote, I was in and out in 5 minutes. I'd never voted that fast in my life. And just, monitoring the situation across the country, it was pretty good. Everyone, there were obviously isolated incidents. There always are when you're talking about, hundreds of millions of people going to the polls. But there wasn't big, fights breaking out in the streets. There were some protests in D.C. around the White House. They appeared to be pretty, subdued. So yeah, but that's what I worry about, Jill. That is his sort of call to arms last night or this morning, whenever that was, a couple hours ago, the president. Oh, God, it makes me nervous.
Okay, now let's go to some ballot referendums that we've been talking about, and a major win for Uber and Lyft. California voters passed Prop 22, which allows gig economy companies to continue to classify their workers as independent contractors in the state. Florida is now the 8th state and the first red state to adopt a $15 minimum wage, which it will gradually phase in over the next 5 years. Drug legalization supporters had a big night. Oregon will become the first state to decriminalize possession of hard drugs like cocaine and heroin, and will institute a tax on cannabis to help fund addiction treatment. Oregon also legalized magic mushrooms for mental health therapy. And recreational marijuana sales swept in the 4 states where it was on the ballot. So New Jersey, Arizona, Montana, and South Dakota all projected to pass their marijuana initiatives.
Pretty interesting on the drug front.
Yeah.
The first thing that I thought when I saw New Jersey passed it, which I thought that they would, so it wasn't that surprising to me, but New Jersey is now a state where it will be legal to smoke a blunt on the street, but illegal to pump your own gas. Wow, what a country we live in. What else was I going to say? Oh God, I really am I'm losing my train of thought today, Jill. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Bear with me today, guys. I just need a couple hours of sleep. That's what I wanted to say about the ballot referendums. First of all, Prop 22 passing, that of course was the most expensive ballot proposition in California history, and it looks like it ends up being worth it for Uber, Lyft, Postmates, DoorDash, those companies. And also that's of course a loss for sort of the labor movement in that state and in the country. But one thing that I thought that was pretty fascinating about a couple of these, which is Florida passing $15 minimum wage, and marijuana passing in red states like South Dakota and Montana. I mean, if you're the Democratic Party, I don't understand how you don't look at that and you're not. I mean, they should be embarrassed, really. Like, I mean, you're talking about Florida $15 minimum wage passed with a supermajority, even though Democrats lost across the state. Montana passed recreational marijuana. No Democrats in that state did well. It's like it just shows you that, at least for me, that maybe Democrats should actually start campaigning on some of these issues in the country that have broad support, like legalization of marijuana, like a $15 minimum wage. Maybe try to increase the electorate, increase the younger turnout, rather than just trying to do battle over the same fraction of like older white voters who seem to decide every election. So that's my early take, at least.
I think that, look, the pandemic overshadowed everything, especially
Yeah.
I think for the media as well. And I think that the media, I learned this in Poli-Sci 101, right? It's like the media and communications 101. We cover the horse race. We don't cover the issues. We cover who's ahead. We cover the polls. Like, who cares about the polls? We should cover the issues. We should cover where these people stand on issues that affect us all. And I think it's a widespread failure on all of our parts. But I also think you have to give people, it's this thing, right? Like, what do people want? People are more interested in the horse race stuff.
Drama,
the same way that you're interested in Kim Kardashian, even though it's bad for you.
Yeah, Jill, look, and I think that, there were big polling errors. Whatever happens, and we do not know what the outcome of the presidential race is, there were polling errors again this year. And I think that one of the things that we're going to have to, look back on again is the value of polling. You yourself have been have been very bearish on polls, more so than me this cycle, and it seems like you were onto something, because I don't know if there's going to be polling errors the way there were in 2016, but I mean, look at Wisconsin, right? Wisconsin is neck and neck right now. There was an ABC Washington Post poll last week that had Joe Biden up 17 points. Like, what? That's a massive polling error, right? Florida went for Trump 4 or 5 points. The margin in the polling averages was much closer. So yes, I think that we've got to figure that out as a country. The methodologies behind the polling, or just scrapping it entirely, because I don't know if it's doing anybody any good other than making people insane. But yeah, but I'll leave it there. I do think that the issues, some of these issues, the Democrats could do a better job on running. But to your point, and one of the things that I was covering on Cheddar last night was the exit polls and COVID. In every exit poll, COVID was essentially the number one topic, the number one issue that voters were deciding on. But one interesting thing that I kept noting to myself, Jill, you and I always talk about how, we learned in poli-sci classes and just covering elections that that question on in a lot of surveys about, do you think the country is headed on the right or wrong track? That's always a really good indicator of what's going to happen in an incumbent election, because if a majority of people say that the country is headed on a wrong track, that's bad for the incumbent. That's really interesting this year, because the majority of people in almost every exit poll said the country was headed on the wrong track. And in some of those states, like Ohio, for instance, they still pulled the lever for President Trump. So maybe that one of those sort of, poli-sci 101 truisms, maybe that's not the case anymore.
I think especially during a pandemic, where I think a lot of people feel worse, but it's who are you blaming, right? And I think that the president's done a job, a nice job for his supporters, framing it as, this wasn't my fault, and I'm the
Right.
one who's going to get us back to quote unquote normal. All right, we do need to leave it there. But thanks everyone for hanging in there for this podcast. We appreciate it. That is just a state of where things stand at this moment. Hopefully by tomorrow or the end of the week, we might have a little bit more clarity, but most experts saying, it's going to likely be days, not hours, and potentially weeks. So, we may not have clarity for a while.
Yeah, I think everyone should just take a chill pill today. Do yourself a favor and just, I don't mean to, we work in the news, so I don't want to tell you not to watch us, but take a media break today, right? Get off social media today, go outside, enjoy the fall weather, enjoy your family, your friends. I don't think this is getting called today. I think we're going to be here until tomorrow or Friday. It's going to be intense. It's going to be an intense couple of days, just like you and I have been saying for the last couple of weeks. This is going to be election week, not election day. But keep cool. We'll get through it. We'll hang in there together, right?
All right, Carlo, you get some sleep. That's what you need to know for Wednesday, November 4th.
Bye, guys.